Okay. Okay, well, welcome to week 2 of Grow or Die. Hi, Laura.
Yeah. Hey, Laura.
Okay, so last week we tackled one of your favorite topics and one that I have a fondness for as well, shame and how to navigate through it. Very, very meaty stuff. And it actually is what led to my choice for this week's topic. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So, one of the things that I love about Brene Brown's work, and I feel like these episodes are going to keep turning into commercials for everything she does. But one of the things I love about her work is that there's so much in it that I don't think I've ever met anybody who didn't find, 2, 3, 4, like really dead on nuggets that just hit you at your core.
Mm-hmm.
And, the shame is obviously like the big one, and it's very much an overarching theme, and a lot of what she does kind of bubbles up under it. But she has a couple of really, really valuable points that, like, they're the kind of things that when you read it in the book, like, I have to put the book down because I'm like, wow. Oh, like that was like a paradigm shifting moment.
Yeah.
So when we started talking about her last week, I realized like I knew what my topic for this week had to be.
Okay.
It's one of those ones for me. So the question that I have is around how do you name, claim, and maintain your boundaries so you don't end up in festering resentment?
Wow. Oh, man.
Especially when you deal with like being in a leadership role at work, right? I know so many people who spend their Saturday mornings catching up on email, their Sunday nights catching up on email, they're complete, and then there's me. I watched myself go job to job where I just went all in and nothing else mattered and no boundaries. And over time, my resentment level just rose and rose until I hit a straw that breaks the camel's back moment. And I'm like, screw this, I'm out, I quit.
Yeah. Oh, man. So immediately what comes up for me is kind of the idea, John Maxwell quote, where it says, if you don't choose a path, anyone to get you there. And I feel that way about boundaries. And what happens a lot of times with most leaders is we come into an organization and you want to show everybody what you got. And so you're all in, right? Hands, toes, everything's in the pot. And then next thing you know, you look up and you're a year down the road and people are doing a hodgepodge of stuff. And you immediately revert to, no, why are you doing it that way? Well, last time I did that, I got a success. And then you go around the corner and employee number 2, why are you doing that? Well, last time I did that, I got acknowledged. And so people begin to do how they experience you. And so with boundaries, it becomes this inconsistent hodgepodge of stuff. And so what I say early on with people is come in with hey, this is me. These are X, Y, and Z of expectations up front. And then once I learn what the organization looks like, I'll begin building. Because if you don't put those fences around yourself early, people will think that, God, and I hate this term, open door to everything. And it's not that case. And I mean, there's a wonderful book, No Ego, that talks about that, where qualify and quantify open door policy. And again, when it comes to boundaries, your feelings, your emotions, people will just cringe on you if you don't set clear expectations, is the word that keeps coming up for me, with how people should experience you from a boundary standpoint. Hopefully that makes sense.
No, it totally does. And it reminds me actually, so I've had plenty of bosses over the years that were perfectly happy to exploit my lack of boundaries and my willingness to drop everything and get on a plane. And, I had one business trip, I swear to God, it started off as a 2-week trip, ended up 57 days.
Ooh.
I went between the US and Europe 3 times. I went bounced back between multiple European countries. I mean, like, it was crazy. 57 days. Wow. And the truth is, like, plenty of organizations are perfectly content to let you do that. And what I really had to experience firsthand was twice I had bosses who put their foot down on my behalf about my boundaries. I had one who actually kicked me out of the office. He's like, go, you take a vacation, get out. I don't want to see you. I don't want you coming back before whatever it was. He gave me a date. He's like, I don't want to see you in here before then. And I want to see your autoresponder on your email. I don't want you responding to email. Go, you need to unplug. And I was like, huh? What? You know, and then fast forward more than a decade, actually. And I was in a new role. And again, only girl in a boys club. I was brought in a very senior position in a very, at a very high intensity time. It was immediately after an acquisition, and I was there. I had a lot to prove. I was out to prove stuff. And I remember one night we were at dinner with a client, and something came up about a presentation or a spreadsheet or something that I needed to make a tweak to. And I remember telling my boss in that, I was like 9:30 at night. We were like having cocktails or something. And we'd been in client meetings all day. And I said, you know, actually, I'm going to make the update to that tonight before I go home. I'm going to go back to the office, make the update to that file, and then, you know, and then go home. And he looked at me and he said, and mind you, I was less than 90 days on the job at that point. And he looked at me and he said, all right, listen, you got to do what you got to do, but you're in the office every day before 7 a.m. I know that. And you going back to the office at 11 o'clock at night, that's not sustainable, and you need to get that under control. And again, it was one of those moments where I was like, no entiendo. ¿Cómo se dice? But the flip side of that was like, I very much recognize in myself, and to be fair, it's totally not just with work, but definitely I see it in work where I do get so eager to prove that I'm, you know, I can do it, and I can do it better, faster, tougher, stronger than everybody else. You know, I get in my whole like bionic woman mode that I want to prove it. And so I'll answer email on, you know, Sunday nights, and I'll, you know, be checking email between, you know, getting meals or, you know, like whatever. And it's like, wow, really? You've just set the boundaries for everybody. And you told them you don't have any.
So one thing that, and I was writing something down that you said that I've never put together, that it's always been there, of this insatiable need to make yourself fit what the stereotypical leader is supposed to do. And one thing growing up as a minority is this banter, and probably you, the narrative of, as a woman, you need to be 200 times better than your counterpart. And it wasn't until probably about 5 years ago where I was like, I know I'm hedging and I'm not even giving 100% of me, and I'm outpacing and outperforming people. What if I got good at being unapologetically 100% me? And when I started being 100% me and comfortable and confident in my ability, what I stopped doing was stretching and compartmentalizing the stretch. And so one area I was gassing myself out. Then another area, I was like, I'm better than everybody in this arena, so I'm not going to go that hard. But what was happening is I was putting all that extra energy in these other buckets where it was just tiring. And it was just this constant roller coaster of emotions and feelings. And that was like, and then what was it rooted in was comparison. Mm-hmm. And it was just like, man, I'm in a competition with one person, and he's looking back at me in the mirror. And boundaries got easy. Boundaries got positioned around my capacity, not your perceived reality and capacity for my role in your organization. And I stopped absorbing all that additional pressure of what I believed. And then here's this phenomenon. I started asking questions. What do you expect from me? Because I found myself, even 100% of me, was still doing more than they actually expected. So,
well, or doing the wrong,
working on the
thing.
wrong stuff. Oh my gosh.
So, like I've been writing on my blog and my email recently about Gallup's 12 elements of employee engagement, right? The number one thing is I know what is expected of me at work. And if you don't have that, you can expend enormous amounts of energy on the wrong stuff and burn yourself out and not actually touch the stuff that's, that the people around you think is important.
Exactly. And go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to ask you. So,
Yeah.
One of the things that I always love hearing about from you is, so since we come from different industries, right? And we come from very different backgrounds, when I think about my journey to finding boundaries at work, and I totally agree with you. I think from a minority and a woman perspective, we're often told like, you got to double up to outshine the white boys that you're competing with because they outnumber you like, 15-1. And so I think there's a really unhealthy model that we absorb there. But when it comes to boundaries, I'm curious from your perspective, if obviously you came out of the military. The military, if there's one thing that the military is good at, it's breaking you down to build you back up in a way that's conducive for their objectives. Do you feel like the military was helpful or harmful in your ability to maintain boundaries with work?
I think it's both. And I would say it's created a different person today than I believe would have happened if I hadn't gone in the military. And so the reason why I say both, it's hurt me because when I transitioned out 5 years ago, because of the types of type A personalities, the type of team players and collaborative environments I was a part of, I actually came out with this false expectation of people on this side of life. And so where I found myself increasingly frustrated with people's go mode. And I was like, man, you do not have another switch. Like, oh, that is your high level.
You're in fifth gear and they're in second.
But it was like, oh, okay. And people were like, hey, dude, you need to calm down. You need to slow down. And I was like, you need to actually find another gear. Go to a mechanic, get a tune-up. And then once it happened, it was like, okay, who is this really about? In far as becoming aware, because one of the things that was crazy is that later in my career is when we actually started 360 assessments as a part of our reviews. We started 360s in the Army, and beginning to get that feedback. And so there was a level of awareness that I had upon coming out where had I not gotten that early on as Captain Henderson in the middle part of my career and then practiced it as a lifestyle, now I see organizations that they don't even do feedback. They don't even do it. And so if I would have just went straight into the workforce, would I be that 20 plus year tenured associate down the line that's never actually gotten any usable feedback for growth? And if you're in my shoes, I didn't get my first mentor until 2 years after being out of the military. And so it's crazy. So almost 15, 16 years after leaving college is when I got my first mentor. That's insane. So I was just fumbling through life.
So it's so funny. Your story reminds me, oh my God, I'm going to sound like such a nerd, which I am, so it's okay. But it reminds me of an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation where Picard has this opportunity to see what his life had been if he hadn't had this really dangerous heart injury when he was younger and what his life would look like. And the parallel universe that emerged was a man who didn't take risks and who played it safe all the time. And he was a very low level. He had a very low rank. He wasn't, captain of the Enterprise. Like it was, but the stark reality of it was that this really traumatizing or difficult event in his life had been an enormous catalyst for a lot of the growth and so I think it's so funny because I think so many people like to, I mean, obviously nobody enjoys trauma, like trauma by its definition, that is not something you want. But I think the truth is it's so many people have that I see all the time find their biggest growth and their biggest learning and their biggest catalyst for whatever achievement they accomplish came out of what they got from a really, horrible experience.
For sure.
Sign up for a horrible experience, you can't underestimate that sometimes it's the rocket fuel and, that gets you off the ground.
For sure. So I'm curious, and you're right on the cusp of telling your story. What is your story? How did you end up today, and in particular, the name of your company?
Okay. So it's funny. So my company actually started off as a partnership with some of my former Ukrainian team. And because we all come from Eastern Europe, the Firebird is an Eastern European fairy tale.
Okay.
And so it was kind of an homage to the Eastern European thing. But the summit part was very much, and to be fair, Firebird is a phoenix, and it's about, burning down and reinventing, which has been like my key metaphor in my life the last couple years. But summit really comes back to achieving more than you thought and having an ambitious goal. And there's nothing I don't love more than a good BHAG. So I like that. And so that's where it came from. But specifically for me, I think the thing that also became clear, this is my third round of self-employment. The first time I had my own business was a function of pure necessity. It was after the crash in 2008. I had been transitioning jobs. I had 3 job offers, moved from New York to Austin. And in the amount of time that I moved, all 3 job offers went away because everybody panicked about the market. And so I started doing a little bit of consulting. I stood up my own business, but it was a function of pure necessity. I didn't want to do it. And I was circumstances dragged me kicking and screaming. That's, a couple years later, I go back to work full time. A few years after that, I go back and I'm self-employed round 2. A little bit more direction, a little bit more clarity. Still not. I still viewed it very much as a short-term kind of interim thing. And this last round was, I think, for me, the first time that I've gone in really committed and eager to do it because of my last corporate job and the way it ended. And it was exactly this. It was my boundaries. I went in with no boundaries. It rode its course. At the end, I did what I have now done on 3 separate occasions that I now see that I have done on 3 separate occasions, which is allow my own lack of boundaries to burn me out until I'm resentful and until my only answer is basically, screw you, I'm out of here. Wow. And in math, they say that you have to have 3 points or three points in space to plot a pattern. Yeah. That was really it for me. I'm like, oh my God, this is such an unhealthy pattern. Like, why have I been doing this? I knew, romantic relationships, I had the same problem, right? No boundaries in the beginning and you try to enforce them later and all of a sudden everybody's upset. And I realized that was just a bad habit that I had. And for me, that's why, Brene Brown's work just was a zinger for me on that front because I found myself doing, and she has some great stories about, stuff that she doesn't want to agree to and then being, resentful and pissed off later. And it's like, that's so passive aggressive. And I do not think of myself as a passive aggressive person at all. And so when I realized that I was doing something repeatedly, and once I had seen that pattern, I'm like, holy crap, I have to stop that because this is not it's not who I want to be. Yeah. B, it's definitely not how I want to show up as a leader, but see, even more than that, it keeps hurting the relationships in my life. And again, getting into middle age, you start realizing that those are the important things. And the last thing I know no job is going to last indefinitely, right? The jobs go away. But the most important relationships, I have been very fortunate to continue them over, the 25 years of my career. And that behavior undermines those. And I don't, that to me was not worth the price of, my temper tantrum on my way out the door because I was just pissed off because somebody had taken advantage of a situation that I had created myself. Wow.
So what comes up for me, and thank you for that. Because when you said, just that analogy of there being these 3 points or what it could be 50 for whoever, but it quickly had me process what were my 3 points along this journey to full-time entrepreneurship. And since I transitioned in 2015 from the Army, first started off trying to sell insurance. Don't ask me why. Don't ask me why. So that lasted 5 months. Then second next job was in HR information systems. wanted to stab myself with sharp objects every day, sitting in the office. And I started down this road of learning and development. It was always in the backdrop of coaching. And then the next gig was in training and development. I was like, oh, dream position, dream position. But what's funny is something you said about boundaries is I was really, really clear with this third opportunity of what my boundaries were. And it had everything to do with what was important to me. And it was all a value set. And one thing that in Brene, one of Brene Brown, and I have it posted so I can constantly look at it, and where she talks about courage is not an inherent trait. It is, however, less about who people are and more about how they behave and show up in difficult situations. And everything you just described, everything you just broke down, and why Alora is who she is today and why Lawrence is who he is today, is we show up. And if we don't show up as us in every situation, it's wrong. And I haven't felt more me in a long time than I have, right? Like I am today. And it's because I was willing to say, is this a thing for me? And I think boundaries, if I didn't know what I was standing on and in the foundations of what was important to me, I believe that's why people stay in organizations too long.
Oh, I would totally agree.
It's a moving target.
It's safe, and you don't have to ask yourself hard questions.
Golly. And not only that, about asking tough questions, it's about, you know what, I can put a clock to it. This is going to happen. I know, in that comfort part of it, right, is such a false comfort in, like, you know what, check comes on the 1st and 15th. I know what to expect from my boss. He or she yells on Mondays, takes off on Tuesday. They're back to yelling Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday they work from home. And I could just do that from week to week, and I know my pace, right? But I think the boundaries piece of it, Alora, is that people, for lack of a better term, they take others into consideration. And how will I be perceived versus does this make me feel safe? And I think ultimately we all want to feel safe in our environments. But then if you really were honest with yourself, have you created opportunities for people to know what safe looks like for you?
So it's funny. So what that reminds me is something else Brene Brown talks about all the time when it comes to courage, which is her daily mantra of, I choose courage over comfort. And I think that is it's so hard, and that shows up in so many ways. And it also gets to, I swear we're creating like an endless commercial for her. It also comes to the other thing that she says that ties back to what you said, which is, that authenticity is a daily practice. It's not a box you get to check and then move on. Like authenticity is, and that's one of my 2 most important core values. And so for me, that's been an important way to look at it, is to recognize that I am given opportunities every day to make a decision about showing up authentically or just getting along to go along.
Yeah.
And you have to make that choice. And it doesn't get to be that, oh yeah, I'm an authentic person, or no, I'm not. It's like, no, this choice is an authentic choice. And the next choice that comes up, I have to make that decision to do that again or not. And there's no autopilot for it. And it's just like your point about courage. It all ties back together. And it's about showing up, and it's about how you want to show up over and over again.
Yeah.
So I think it's so hard to do that if you don't know.
Yeah.
It's really important to you, and which comes back to the values point, right? Like, it's so much easier to be consistent with your boundaries when you know what your values are.
Yeah. Oh my God. So, and I truly believe it's the great equalizer to filtering who your tribe is, right? And again, I get it. Everybody wants to be a part of something, but you don't have to be a part of everything. Like, understand who you are and feel so comfortable in your skin and so unapologetic about it. Like, I love the word being unapologetically me. Like, I love it so much now because it's a real thing for me now. And I was the guy who, man, why didn't he text me back? Why did they go away? Well, you were clear about who you are and what they were clear too. And they stopped coming around because they weren't ready for that. Good. And I'm like, oh, that's a thing. Like, it's a natural filter, right? And so as it pertains to values, like you, and I love consistency, right? And the other word I'll use is becoming disciplined in how you describe, and it gets more refined in the messaging, because your messaging becomes a lifestyle. And that is the action that people, they read your life, how they observe you, what they're watching. It's like a TV show. And if every time somebody encounters you, they're experiencing a different episode of something, your boundaries are all over the place. Yeah. But people want to experience a consistent and disciplined version of you, and so that they can build relationship. And I believe that's what we all want to encounter, is authentic relationship. I know what I'm going to get with Alora. And I am not surprised when something comes out of your face that, and I'm thinking about the people around me. I guarantee somebody got offended, but it's so awesome. It's so awesome. But I know Alora. It is what it is.
Well, and I think that's, I think it's funny what you just said reminded me of, especially working with a lot of like startups and stuff, working on honing your elevator pitch. And the truth is, you have an elevator pitch for you too. Yeah. And to your point, sometimes, there's a meme that I love, and I think I have it on Instagram like 6 different times. It says, you know what? You're going to be too much for some people, but guess what? Those aren't your people.
100%.
And you know what? We all absolutely want to find our tribe. And sometimes you get so frustrated that it feels like it's okay to compromise, and all right, well, I can make do here, just because you feel so isolated that anything is better than nothing. But the truth is, it's not. It's a short-term hit with a long-term price.
There you go.
I think it's really hard to remember that sometimes when you're not kind of clicking with people, right? And then when you find people that you click with, it's like, no, I'm not letting those guys go, which is why I love that we get to do this, because it's so, like, you and I both have that experience, right? We're like, oh my God, you are a little too much for me. And like you and I, and the thing is that not everybody actually has that effect on other people. So not all people. And so that's one of those things that I've kind of developed a spidey sense for when I meet somebody is, oh no, he's in the habit of being considered too much. He's gonna be my new BFF, because he and I understand what that means, and that sometimes it does suck and it hurts your feelings and you feel rejected. And you and I can sound all ballsy and stuff when we talk about
it sucks.
But it can really hurt. And especially when you're younger and you don't really understand that you're intimidating people and you don't even mean to. I mean, and again, this is one of those things that I love about getting like older, is you're like, okay, no, you know what? I'm sorry that, I scared the living crap out of you.
Yep.
But I guess what? I guess that means we're probably just better off on our respective sides of the fence, and you do
there
your
you go.
Mine. But it takes time and effort, and really learning what the right fit feels like. Because when you meet somebody, and it's funny, I have a list I keep here near my desk of people that I kind of like instantly connected with. And the truth is, when that happens and you're like we're like, on the same wavelength super soon, I think it really helps to remind yourself of that when you do have those moments where you're like, I really like that person, but it's not fitting right. And it's it happens with friends, it happens with colleagues, it happens with romantic partners, like it happens in all relationship dimensions. And so, being too much can kind of suck, but on the other hand, it's kind of a great filter, because other people who are also too much are probably exactly your people.
Yeah. So I'm going to go first, and I'm going to ask you, as we wrap this up today, what's your pitch? So I know mine, and crazy thing is, in a coaching session, I pulled it out because I was going through it. I was having a moment, and my pitch now is, My mission is to value and be valued by showing respect through respectful service in order to live a life filled with integrity and peace, thus connecting me to a hopeful and unlimited future.
That is a very, very polished version, way more so than mine. Nice. Okay. So mine is I work with people that I love on projects that I find meaningful. And my underlying goal is to help other people discover and realize their own unique badasseriness.
Create new language out in these streets. That's what I'm talking about.
There we go.
That's so awesome. That is so awesome.
So as we wrap up, I want to also announce that we have another project that we're doing with another friend of ours.
Woo! Yes.
It's super exciting. Why don't you, so since I've talked so much this time, why don't you?
No, it's all good. So we brought in another crazy, super talented and gifted coach, Paul Tripp, in another podcast that we all combined our superpowers, and crazy synergy just happened in our first episode today. And go ahead and give them the name, Alora.
Oh, it's Action, Not Excuses.
Man, and in this podcast, we're laying it down, right? From every angle, every perspective. And again, just so you all understand, this is not just two people who come from the same type of neighborhood, or three people come from it. We got West Coast, East Coast, South, North, like we got them covered. Like we're traveled people with different backgrounds, different love languages, and we're just coming to impart wisdom, get raw, and raw as an acronym of sharing real authentic wisdom with you all, and I'm excited that I get to come along for the ride.
So me too. And yeah, obviously we both love Paul too. And I think what's really fun about, and we saw it in our first conversation today, is that, Paul really is very, very committed to focusing on that C-suite and having that, that breakthrough moment. And you have this view of this whole developmental life cycle of people and organizations. And I really love those new managers and helping them discover their superpower. And so for all of us, we come at how do you build a healthy organization? From completely different perspectives, which is so much fun to hear how it looks from a different lens. And so it's awesome. And so we'll be doing that once a week. We'll get that information pushed out as well. But yes, we've got that underway. So we'll wrap up this week, and next week Lawrence gets to spring a topic on me.
Oh, I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, I know. In the meantime, as always, my friend, I love getting the chance to talk to you.
You as well.
We'll wrap it up for now and regroup next week.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Take care.
All right.